Right, so thanks for coming back to CDB TV. We're going to dive straight into our next bike, which of course is this 1976 250 GS Italian Moto Gori. Another one of those very nice bikes that I came across at the Telford Classic Dirt Bike Show this year. Now, at the time I took these short video clips and pictures, there wasn't much in the way of information supplied with the bike on the day, but it's certainly a 1976 250 GS enduro bike, as I said, and I don't think it's a fully original machine from that year, but it does look like it's maybe undergone some kind of restoration or refurbishment at one time, but nevertheless it's still a very nice looking Italian classic. Now, I'm sure that you already know that Moto Gori Motorcycles was founded in Italy by Giancarlo Gori back in the early 1970s, who basically began by manufacturing small off-road motorbikes, including motocrossers and trials machines. But he did diversify into road racing bikes as well, which used smaller 125 or even 250 Sachs or Rotax engines, which at that time were certainly deemed to be one of the top two-stroke power plants of their day. And by being an Italian motorcycle manufacturer, they certainly did build some very nice machines, including this rare MT325 trials bike. But as we get back to our featured Gori machine, and this little Gori GS here is made up from a lightweight tubular steel chassis, which, as you can see, is also fitted with a centre stand, which is quite an unusual feature on what's basically an off-road racer. But I expect that this is something to do with this bike being the GS Enduro model, in which case you have to maybe sometimes remove the wheels for repair or some kind of other maintenance while you're doing a long enduro race event. And again, the bike's rear swing arm is also made up of a steel tube type structure, and also has all the associated add-ons of a spring-loaded chain tensioner and roller assembly at the bottom as well. And at the front, it's a double cradle type down tube design that runs down the front of the engine, and it also allows the exhaust system of that Sachs centre port engine to pass through in the middle. Now, during their early years of manufacturing, Moto Gori did use a variety of different engines to power their motorcycles, and in addition to using the popular Rotax or Sachs engines, they also utilised power plants from the likes of Minarelli and Hyro, and also Moto Marini. But as you can gather, our GS250 here is fitted with the very popular Sachs two-stroke engine, which is a superb piston port power plant, and this one here is also fitted with the highly desirable 7-speed gearbox as well. But as to why you would need a 7-speed gearbox on an off-road racer, I don't exactly know, although I suppose it would certainly come in very handy on an enduro bike such as this, especially if you were maybe doing a lot of road riding in between those off-road sections. But then again, this is more than likely one of the same engines that Gori used in their road racing bikes, so I can certainly understand the logic of the 7 speeds in that respect. But there's no question that these German-built Sachs engines were very well engineered, which is why they were used on a multitude of different bikes during the 1970s and early 80s, and even the British-built Cotton EMCs used these Sachs motors to power them. But as I remember, these Sachs engines' crankcases were connected together horizontally, so if you needed to work on the bottom half of the engine, you could still leave the cylinder and the head attached, but these compact little two-strokers were ideally suited to power an off-road racer because they were very reliable and they did produce a decent amount of power. But as we move on to the front end of our Gori GS, it was more Italian-made parts in the shape of these Marzocchi forks, which in the 1970s and 1980s were certainly enjoying quite a lot of popularity among motorcycle manufacturers across Europe, because these Marzocchi forks were deemed to be among some of the best forks of their day. But you also have to remember that in the 1970s you didn't have much in the way of suspension choice back then. Now, stopping power for the GS250 was supplied by a pair of Grimeka hubs and brakes, and these old school drum brake systems were certainly quite good on this Gori machine, because this wasn't exactly a heavy bike, so these old drum brake systems were more than adequate for the power and the weight of this particular Italian pony. And again, here at the back of the bike, more of those Italian influences with these rather radical-looking piggyback Corti-Cosso shocks, which I'm sure are one and the same items that were fitted to this bike in '76, but although they might look high-tech for that year, the reality was that these weren't exactly that great. But owners certainly did used to say that these Corti-Cossos were absolutely perfect to support the weight of the bike while it was sitting on the showroom floor. Now again, the fuel tank on our Gori usually held, I think it was just over the 2 gallons of premix fuel, which was normally enough to complete even the longest of motocross races or enduro events. And again, because this was an enduro version, and of course the days before those outer limits high-tech satellite navigation systems, Gori even made a little facility here on the top of the tank where you could clip on your route map just in case you got lost somewhere in the wilderness. And as 1970s off-roaders go, it was a reasonably comfortable seat on our GS, and although I've never actually tested one of these bikes myself, this seat still has the look of one that would be quite a good comfortable place to drop your backside down on. But you can still see that this little GS250 is in reasonably good original condition, even if it has had some work done in the past. And you can see that it still appears to have its original exhaust expansion chamber, which looks like it's ding or dent free even after 42 years of use on the track. And here at the back of the bike we have what still looks like the stock 1976 tailpipe, which has that removable baffle inside where you can simply take out the inside of the silencer and then repack it when that old fibre packing gets contaminated. So it's nice to see more original parts still bolted on to this classic Italian racer. And once more, when it comes to the Moto Gori's plastics, my guess here is that these side panels and the front and the rear mudguards and that front headlight surround as well will all probably be remanufactured parts, because these parts are in far too good a condition for a 42-year-old bike. But that's only to be expected, because even if this bike was still being used regularly, then the chances are that these plastics would have been in a pretty dire state anyhow, and replacements would have been fitted either way. But it does make the bike nice and fresh, as you can see. And up here in the pilot seat of our Enduro 250, it still has those period correct and proper handlebars for our 76 bike, with that crossbar welded on and not clamped on as they do have in modern day motocrossers, and other parts like the levers are also the correct Magura items for the period. And naturally it also has a speedometer as well for when the rider takes to the highway, and that's just to keep it road legal and on the right side of the law. So as you can see, this is another fine example of Italian motorcycle craftsmanship, and quite a rare specimen as well, because although these Moto Goris were popular in their native Italy and some of their other European neighbours, very few of these bikes were actually sold or even seen here in the UK, and you just don't see them take to the tracks in this modern day. And the ones that have survived, like our GS250 here, are normally used as just show bikes or talking points in somebody's private collection. And as I said, I never actually managed to talk to the owner of this bike while I was at the show, and there was only the basic amount of information displayed on the bike when I grabbed these clips. But nevertheless, it's still quite good to see one of these elusive Italian stallions once again, and it's a credit to the owner who's kept this very fine example in this fantastic condition. And this bike here is just typical of the very high quality off-road bikes that you can see at the Telford Classic Dirt Bike Show each year. Right, so coming up next, we're going out and about once again to cover round 4 of the Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club's 2024 Championship, which will be this weekend at Slamanan near Falkirk. And of course, you can see all of these bikes and the racing from this event shortly here on my YouTube channel. So once again, thanks for watching, and until the next time, it's cheerio for now.